I've never been a fan of Judd Apatow films. They've just never really appealed to me. Now, I'm not one of those prudish people who thinks that vulgarity has no place in film. I mean, there is a place for it, and I occasionally laugh at the occasional fart joke and stuff like that, much like anybody. It's just the kind of humor you see in Judd Apatow films just never really appealed to me. It's the same reason why I've never seen films like American Pie, and I know there's probably other ones on the list that many people have considered classics, but point being, I'm mentioning this because I want to put this out there and make it clear that I may not be the best gauge of quality for a film like this, because I don't view these films all that often, and so I'm not really sure about Judd Apatow's overall style, because this is actually the first Judd Apatow film I've seen. So, really, point being, I'm kind of out of my element here, guys, so bear with me. It was hard for me to get into this film because I had a hard time getting to like our main character. She's crude, selfish, and she's obviously using her behavior to run from some severe emotional problems that she sorely needs to deal with. It didn't help that the first members of the supporting cast we see were also really unlikable people. It was kind of bordering on Rob Zombie levels of uncomfortable for the first few minutes. It wasn't until we saw how her behavior was affecting the people around her and the relationships she had outside of work that I actually started getting into the story. Because now it went from, oh, this movie is just filled with unlikable people, to, okay, now we're actually seeing how this unlikability is actually affecting the world around them. This I can get into. However, even though it picks up after the inciting incident, there are still a few moments where I found myself getting pulled out of the experience. There are a few scenes, moments, beats, what have you, that you can tell they wrote those to be the heavy-hitting gags. However, these bits feel like they go on for longer than they probably should. Not to the point where it's really painful and unbearable, but more to the point where the joke stops being funny. It was like they took multiple ad-libs that the actors made during production and then threw in all of the takes when they only really needed one. On top of that, there are also some jokes that feel a little too mean-spirited at times. I understand that there are characters who are meant to be unpleasant, who are meant to be unlikable, but with the amount of unpleasant people already in this film, the added unpleasant jokes just felt like overkill. That's not to say that the film isn't without its moments of humor, as some of the funniest jokes, or at least some of the moments that I laughed out loud the most, came from the stunt-casted cameos, namely people like John Cena and LeBron James. The reason why is because they seemed to more or less verbalize what the audience was actually thinking at that moment, and did it in a pretty hilarious way. I mean, especially just some of the exchanges between Bill Hader's character and LeBron James, those were some of the funniest in the film, in my opinion. As for the story as a whole, it plays out like your typical romantic comedy with a raunchy edge. They meet, they hook up, all goes well, something bad happens, they break up, they realize they love each other and make up via some grand gesture. This whole bit has been done in Don John and summarized perfectly in Don John, that we could pretty much make a beat or a song out of it. It's the same exact beats and tropes that you find in any other romantic comedy. As for any technical aspects, nothing really stood out outside of how formulaic the whole thing was. The pacing really needed to be tightened up because, as I mentioned, there are some scenes that go on for too long, and some jokes that overstay their welcome. Overall, if you like raunchy comedies, then you'll probably enjoy this film more than I did. While there are some genuinely funny moments, there's not enough to warrant a full-on evening showing. The pacing needed work, and they needed to know when to let a joke end. My advice, either stream or rent this one. That seems to be the best way to enjoy these types of comedies. All of that said, Trainwreck gets a 3.5 out of 5. So that's it for this episode of Romney's Reviews. Thank you for watching. I'll see you all next time.